Hello everyone, this is Elena, and today we have a toenail, or rather 2 big fingers, of a 17-year-old girl as our guest. Her mother turned to us and asked for help with such a problem. Well, of course, if someone has been watching my videos for a long time, you know that the problem here is far from one, so we will teach her how to wear socks properly and we will figure out the shoes. But for now, I'll tell the story of what went wrong here. In general, literally a day before the visit, she felt a sharp pain in her fingers exactly after she stood in the plank. The girl went to take up dancing. Well, some kind of modern street direction, and there the trainer said that you need to stand in the plank. But she laid on the plank, and afterward, her fingers began to hurt. Here on the video, I'm checking how they hurt her, conducting a survey, but I already understand that there is a hematoma inside, and the nail has a liquid underneath, which, so to speak, also gives pressure. I also asked, of course, why such a nervous free edge? She says she tried to trim her nails all the way down so they would be round, because she believes that's how they should be trimmed. I'll definitely share more about this later. And here, I will have such long preparations for what I am going to do. I will need to pierce her toenail with a syringe. It may sound unpleasant, but it's not actually painful. The issue is that when she was in plank position, she wasn't wearing the most suitable sneakers. And I clarified it wasn't specialized footwear, but just her sneakers that she walks in. In general, she probably pressed her fingers unsuccessfully and just got 2 bruises. And it hurts, because there is a liquid accumulated under the nail, and, accordingly, the pain is such a piercing. There may be a local increase in temperature, that is, the finger is hot. And of course, a person can't think about anything at this moment. There are 2 solutions here. You can go to the trauma center. By the way, they wrote in the comments that you can pierce such a nail with a heated pin. They do this in trauma centers. I use a method, well, in my opinion, more atraumatic. I will show now which one. And I immediately say there is no anesthesia here. It does not hurt at all. I took a diamond burr first and slightly filed the thickness of the nail plate with it, because it is impossible to determine by eye how thick it is. Then I took a syringe from the pharmacy, which I bought. It was sterile, and I broke it. By the way, a small tip. If your master drops any tool, they should take another one. That's why I left that syringe on the floor. I removed it, and then took a new one for my work. I don't need the syringe itself. I only need the needle from it. It's actually a small one. Now I'm really impressed. I'll ask you to step away from the screen. The task is very simple. You need to slightly angle it, that is, not straight. But at an angle, pierce the nail plate. It won't hurt for a simple reason. The nail is already not connected to the tissues, and this, well, just can't hurt. But on the condition, of course, that you have a steady hand, and you don't pierce more than necessary. And now you can notice that my fingers are fixed. That is, I don't push with all my might to pierce this nail completely, yes, but only following the surgical goal, to pierce its upper part. And as you see, the liquid is already starting to come out there. There won't even be as much red substance as there will be additional fluid, which can occur during moments of injury or some kind of wounds. In general, we will now release all of this, and there will be a lot of it. I made punctures in several places. Sometimes one puncture helps, but today, even that many punctures I made won't help. The nail plate turned out to be thick enough. Because I had already laid out the teaser, they asked me, why did you poke it so much with a needle, and then in the end took pieces? And the whole thing is that the little hole that resulted from the puncture of the syringe needle, it was very, very small. This was not enough for all the liquid to flow out from under the nail. That's why I decided to use the clippers. But here I'm showing you specifically, without speeding up, how it all really was. That I was being careful, slowly figuring out how she feels. Because the girl admitted she's still only 11 years old. She says, well, for the first nail I was, of course, even afraid to look. But when it all passed, when it became easier for me, when the finger stopped hurting, for the second one, she was already watching very, very attentively. I know that on camera this probably looks really, really harsh. In the comments, people are writing, Elena, you're not a doctor. But you know, I just can't poke people with a relaxed scraper. In my opinion, that's too much. In my opinion, a much more humane method is this one. Next, I took an orange stick to gently push back the cuticle because I realized that the nail is thick and we can't pierce anything yet, and decided to push back the cuticle and try to pierce the softer part, practically under it. Here the needle is much easier, and I think that's it. Literally in 5 seconds the problem is solved. As you can see, the liquid went much more, but it didn't come out to the end as I understood. Very simple, because the nail has a bluish-violet hue, well, like the most common bruise, and the signal that everything went correctly becomes exactly the change in the color of the nail plate. That is, it should become light, pinkish, somewhere maybe whitish, because there will be air, but clearly not blue. And here, I already understand that nothing will work out with the needle. And of course, I started preparing the girl for this moment. That is, I say, look, we are pricking you with a needle, it comes out, but little fluid comes out, and there is no possibility to press harder. And her toenail still hurt. Therefore, a small maneuver awaits us further. I'll take a hard alloy cutter to make a notch, and then with a few movements, I'll literally solve this problem. And while I'm showing you all my 500 million attempts, I'm not ashamed to admit that there were many of them here, because it had to be done not cool for the video, but accurately and painlessly for the child. These are slightly different things. So, I want to tell you what happened next. Literally today, and days have passed, probably 5, and I told them to write approximately in a week how things are going, because something will have to be completely removed later. That is, of course, we will remove the liquid now, but it will not grow back. That is, I warned her that she is facing practically a complete loss. Well, at least, on this finger, a complete loss of the nail, but also its further growth. She kind of bravely endured this, agreed, and said, okay, then we'll do it this way. Well, so, her mom wrote to me today. One of their fingers is completely fine. That is, it is dried up, healed. I also gave advice on how to deal with these nails in the future. I'll tell you about it a bit later. But there were problems with the second one. I think the problem lies in the fact that her feet are still too narrow, because the shoes she had, they of course, did not match, let's say, the small requirements that I put forward to her shoes, because they were insufficient. They were narrow. The girl generally has problems with the fact that her feet are constantly hurting, losing. I will show later how I suggested solving this issue. Here, as promised, I'm showing the so-called life hack. Pieces, if anything, also highlighted. It's not ponipers, they are for adult nails, but I want to tell you, they cope with different tasks. My task here was to make a tiny little hole. That is, I first drilled with a cutter, pierced with a needle, and then worked with the pieces. And as you can see, at this stage all the liquid that has accumulated is coming out. Why is it leaking? I'll explain now. There's a space between the nail plate and the bed. And when I press and release, naturally all the contents start to froth, and it turns into, well, such a, forgive me, cappuccino, because I don't know what else to call it. If you could hear the sound, it would remind you of a swimming float, something like that. But after just a few strokes, we can already observe a change in the color of the nail polish. That is, everything that has accumulated there, it gradually comes out. At this moment, the girl starts to be released. That is, the pain sensations pass. She feels easier, and she finally comes out of stupor and starts to smile. Because she turned around at this moment, gathered herself, concentrated. I was also nervous, worried, sweated. Because, well, I understand, a child. And of course, I don't want to scare her. Well, here it has already released her, and we moved on to the conversation about the free edge. I say, why does your free edge look like this? I say, what are you filing with? She says, I file with scissors. And I showed her my bits, and I say, let's show Mom too. You must try to buy such or similar ones. I gave them a link to them. Because after all, I advise to file nails on the feet specifically with bits. Here I show how to do this. And definitely do not file completely in a semicircle, because there is a tendency to grow here. So, and how else the shoes are wrongly chosen, and she is only 11 now, I would not want her to become a constant client of the podiatry cabinet by the age of 12, 13, 14. Somehow, I want to stretch this beautiful moment a little bit. Of course, it's good that we have work, but I would still like there to be more healthy people. Here we have our second little finger. She mentioned he's all right. not in severe pain, and could possibly be left alone. I mean, we've already done this with you, and basically, you weren't in pain. Everything was fine. It was more scary. She says, yes, let's do it. We'll do it. I say, well, good. And then I went on the same scheme that worked for me with the previous finger. So I immediately pushed back the cuticle. Here it is very clearly visible how soft the growth zone is. Even the cuticle is so sticky. But still there are baby scissors. Despite the fact that she is almost as tall as me, I am 177 seconds. Well, that is such a tall girl. And her foot size, listen, is already approaching 40. That is, she can already buy shoes in the adult department. Here I also use a hard alloy cutter. I will definitely leave a link in the description. This is a cutter from Biotech. They have such a set of small hard alloy balls. It's a thing in cleaning, not a list. In such interesting manipulations. A little, but they must be in work. Then the needle again. We introduce it slowly. I found a hole. Here it's somehow easier, because on that finger it was really hard. Here the story is easier. I thought, maybe I can just do it with a needle. I won't need to dig a hole in it. But by the color of the nail plate, I understood that, of course, I will still have to help myself with a piece. But it's nothing scary, because we still have to remove the nail. That is, we can't save it. In any case, it's already under full cleaning for us. I just told the administrators to schedule them for the nearest time, so we can take care of the second nail that is festering for him. This is in this case, it's the first of those I showed. It will have to be removed straight in the nearest time, because it festers. It's still some kind of wound after trauma. And in any case, I wouldn't want something else unnecessary to start there. You saw, yes, the bubble there in the air. So it was quite interesting. So in general, in the coming days, we are expecting such a serious cleaning with her. I'll try to capture this too. Write in the comments, would you be interested to watch? And now, I'll try to request a photo. If it works out, I'll even attach it here somewhere so you can see what it looks like in a few days. That is, one has really dried up, and everything is fine with it, but there were questions with the second one. And returning to the conversation about why there were questions while you're observing, and the beautiful action why something went wrong. I anticipated this. I expected this. Unfortunately, it happens. Because the child has tight shoes, she is active, she is involved in sports, there, dancing at school. Well, that is, there is a lot of work. And of course, I understand that no one will observe any piece there. Yes, there. Well, there. Not a bed regime, but at least some state of peace. People often don't take this seriously, as I do, and I understand this. There's nothing terrible here. No catastrophe happened. We will definitely cope with this and clean it accurately. But it's very important if, let's say, even if it happened that you got into such a situation and were able to roll it accurately, remove the moisture. Everything is cool. Everything is great. Never use a plaster because it will fester under the plaster. Just like it will fester, for example, in non-breathing shoes. There is such footwear in which there are inserts and meshes, and air circulates there. Like how it festers in tight shoes, under no circumstances should this be done, because then the nail will not dry. We need to dry it out. Here, by the way, there is already a small splinter. I showed it to her, showed how I removed the corner, and had a preventive conversation. And I told both her and her mom exactly how to properly trim the nails. Not to trim there in a semicircle. And indeed, it turned out that neither mom nor daughter knew anything about this. But it's not surprising. I meet such people very often. And it's not shameful. It just happened that, so to speak, well, the culture of nail trimming, it's quite young, if you can say so. Here's to you, by the way, a before and after version. That is, how it was, and how it has become for us. Well, now they both know how to properly trim nails. And now we return to the moment of conversation about the flexibility of the legs. There is a talc called Sweat Stop. I highly recommend it for home care. I use it myself, I like it. My son uses it too. It's just inexpensive, not complicated at all. The packaging is large, lasts a long time, but the knives will wear out less. The most ordinary talc, it also has such a bonus there, menthol in the composition. It refreshes very well, it's nice and will smell good too. So, about the finger. Here we just applied a bandage, it's breathable, it's called a PH Haft. Or there are self-adhesive analog bandages. But the main thing is not under the film, not under the plaster. I consulted, was ready to send. Then I look at the shoe of the nose, decided to show, yes, here is the length of the nose. And, of course, it is a little short for the other fingers. Here I show from the other side. But the nose, I want to say, is not the worst. Yes, it gives a slight stretch. It was, by the way, so moist, I would even say wet. And I decided to show how to properly use socks. As we have a service, all socks is a gift. Even to my models, who come for free, I always give socks. I want them to leave in clean ones. I demonstrate the correct method here. That is, they put on a sock and pulled it like this in different directions. It's important that the fingers could move there. I asked to wiggle the fingers so there would be space. But it should be like this not only in the nose, but also in the shoes. This is the typical tension that people usually use their noses for, but you shouldn't do that. It must be free, and you will have immense happiness. Well, that's really true, this is. It really has a very big meaning. Well, she pulled out a classic, pulled out a stool from her shoe. And I think that here you don't even have to tell anything, even in the nose. And we know that the nose slightly reduces the size of the foot. It does not fit in width. And here, of course, you still need to go to the orthopedist and walk on the stool. So that's my story today.